If the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is present in himself, monk knows it is present. The enlightenment factor of mindfulness is absent in himself, a monk knows it is absent. He knows how the unarisen enlightenment factor of mindfulness comes to arise, and he knows the arisen enlightenment factor of mindfulness develops and completes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So, what we are doing now, after each and every practice session, since there are a couple of newcomers, I will just remind that we have a talk and a discussion, right? Why we have a talk and discussion is to see how what Buddha has said aligns with your practice, and to clear out any doubts if you may have, right? And there are three other reasons. I'm not going to give all other reasons here. For that purpose, there are so many sermons, discourses by the Blessed One, but we have selected a discourse called Four Foundations of Mindfulness, or Four References of Mindfulness, because we are practicing mindfulness here, right? So in that, the Blessed One says that is the one and only way to be enlightened. There are four other objectives or four other results of being mindful other than enlightenment. But what we are trying to do here is by practicing and being Buddhist, is not to increase labor efficiency or to gain leadership qualities or any other worldly objective. We are going for the highest possible, which is to enlighten ourselves. So for that purpose, Blessed One says one and only way is Four Foundations of Mindfulness. So he's giving four reference points or four foundations. They are, which we have all discussed in the past, body, feelings, and the mind. And the last one we are discussing now how we become mindful of the nature of the phenomena, right? And even of that, there are three things which we have already completed, three sections, which we call hindrances section, and the aggregate section, clinging aggregate section, and the faculties, right? Or sense basis, right? And after being mindful of those things, those last three things I mentioned is the subtle layer of human existence, right? Hindrances, clinging aggregates, and the sense bases are very fine, subtle layer of human existence, right? When you take body, feelings, and the mind, that's a gross layer, right? So once you go through the gross layer, once you master the gross layer, then you come to this subtle layer, provided your mindfulness is kept to the fore. If your mindfulness is not kept to the fore, if the mindfulness is not in the driving seat, you will not come to the subtle layer. You will be staying only in the three basic layers, the gross layers. That is what happened before Buddha. So after Buddha, when he took the mindfulness as the key, mindfulness to the fore, then this nature of living beings was coming up, was springing up, right? Then he said, these are the three things that might come up, hindrances, just be mindful of that as well. And then you will see your clinging aggregates, how you are clinging to your form and feelings and etc. And just be mindful of that. They will come and fade away. And then similarly, the sense bases, how you react with the world. The entire, how your sense bases are grabbing the sense objects in the world, and how you get entangled in it. That will happen whether you like it or not. Only thing you can do is when that happens, you can be aware. If you are aware, you will not be hooked by the aggregates, right? So if you can do that, then the Blessed One says, spiritual phenomena will come to be, or spiritual phenomena has established already within you. And that is what we are discussing now in the next chapter. And we started a couple of weeks ago, and we mentioned that there are 7 such factors, right? And they are called factors for enlightenment, right? The 7 factors are mindfulness factor for enlightenment, an energy factor, and mindfulness factor, investigative factor, energy factor, rapture, and tranquility, and concentration, and finally the equanimity. So all these things happen starting with the mindfulness factor for enlightenment, right? So we have discussed that in detail, and in the last session, we just took an opening for enlightenment factor for mindfulness, right? And in that, we read out how what mindfulness factor for enlightenment means, and in that explanation, the most important word that we came across was mindfulness in the body, feelings and mind, phenomena, etc., with unremitting mindfulness, right? Unremitting mindfulness means when you are mindful, you are not suspicious about it. When you are mindful, you don't doubt it. When you are mindful, you don't have unsteady or wavering mindfulness. You know you are mindful 100% in full. It's unremitting. It doesn't bounce back. It doesn't shake. Unshaken mindfulness. Right? Okay, so this in Pali we call it asammutta. Asammutta means not shaking, not confused. It's very clear and steady, and not wavering. Right. So we discussed to have this unremitting mindfulness. It is a process. Buddha asked us to keep the mindfulness to the fore at the very beginning. When he started the discourse, at the very beginning, he says, go to a forest, go to a foot of a tree, or go to an empty hut and have your body upright and bring your mindfulness to the fore, keeping your body as the focal point. So he's asking us to be mindful, not just for the sake of being mindful, but keep the mindfulness to the fore. That is the key, that is the seed, that is the entry point. And that mindfulness, which is kept to the fore, gets evolved over time. When you keep on practicing, it is evolving. And that evolves into many stages. And we mentioned in the last session, all together, now we are talking only 7 factors for mindfulness. There are 37 factors of mindfulness, right? And of those 37 factors, 7 factors for mindfulness is just one. There are 30 other factors. In those 30 factors, mindfulness is mentioned 7 times or 8 times. I exactly don't remember. And this is the one before the last. What is one before the last? Mindfulness factor for enlightenment is the one before the last. The last one is right mindfulness. Before getting to the right mindfulness, you have the mindfulness factor, enlightenment factor, mindfulness factor for enlightenment, right? And up to that point, there are a few other stages that has to go through, that has to come through. And the other stages are, the first one is 4 foundations, which you just spoke about: body, feelings, mind, and the phenomena. So if you can be mindful of those things, 4 done to a certain extent, depending on your practice. And along with that, what you develop is like our eye, ear, nose, etc. They are our sense faculties. We develop spiritual faculties. The spiritual faculties are faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and insight. These spiritual faculties are also being developed. So in that, mindfulness gets developed as a spiritual faculty. And that spiritual faculty becomes strength, becomes a power. So it evolves into a power, right? So the 4, which is body, feelings, etc., 4, and then mindfulness as a faculty, and the mindfulness as a strength. And after that, only you get mindfulness as a factor for enlightenment. And after that, only you have right mindfulness. Okay, so this evolution is what we were discussing, right? And in that, we discussed up to, I think, faculty of mindfulness. How we know that our mindfulness faculty is developing, right? And the way how we understood that was, when someone is mindful and when someone's mindfulness faculty is developing, he's complaining. He's complaining that he is unable to keep the attention to the breath. He is unable to keep the attention to the walk. Why that is happening is because you have the faculty. If we apply that to our sense faculties, right? Someone will ask, did you see that? You will say, yes, I saw it. Or if you didn't see, you say, no, I didn't see it. You can say both, because you have the faculty. And even in mindfulness, right, you can say that you are not mindful, or you can't be mindful, or you can't keep your attention to this, because the faculty is developing now. Right? So it's therefore, all these complaints that you have, or negativities or negative talk that you have in the practice, is a very clear indication. That is the certificate to say that you are mindful. That's a mindful. That's how the mindful faculty develops. So in mindfulness, what you will have to keep in mind is, whenever your mindfulness is developing, you will not see a bright light. You will not levitate. You will see things that makes you suffer. You will see things that is more worrying. You will see your own deficiencies, which we have not seen in the past, because we were not mindful. Now when we are mindful, all these stupid things that were under the carpet coming out. Right? So that is what we discussed in the last session, that when the mindfulness faculty is developing, this is happening, and you take that as a compliment. You will have to be happy about it rather than complaining about it. So therefore the Blessed One says, of course you can't keep your attention to the leg while walking. And you know why you can't keep your attention, because there was a beautiful girl walking and you had to look at her. You were aware of it. What Buddha says is, be aware. But your mind says is, no, awareness is not enough. You must hang on to what you want. Right? So that negativity in the mind is coming up now. What is the negativity in the mind? To cling on to something. That is why you are trying to ask the walking or the breath instead of appreciating the awareness. Okay, now we will see how it becomes a power or a strength of mindfulness. And the definition of that is given in there is a book or a chapter called Khuddaka Nikaya, and in that there is a separate section called what do you call coupled sections, and in that there is a section for strength sermons or strength talks, right? In that, Venerable Sariputta is mentioning how each of these spiritual faculties, all these spiritual faculties, the 5 spiritual faculties, faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and the wisdom, these 5 faculties become powers, evolves into powers, right? And he's explaining how these faculties are evolving into powers. I'm not going to take all 5, since we are talking only about mindfulness. So they say the mindfulness becomes a power. Strength of mindfulness is not being distressed when mindfulness is absent. Right. So this is the first thing I learned when my teacher came here in 2006. Right, because I was practicing Goenkaji's technique, and my practice was going so well. I see it now, but I was so unhappy. Lot of distress, lot of unrest, lot of stress, because I know there are a lot of negativities of mind I can see, which I can't talk to people. Because what I felt was, if I am mindful, all this should be ironed out and I should be a very saintly-like person. But whereas I see there is a murderer in me, there is a womanist in me, there is all horrible things within me. Right? So mindfulness, your faculty is showing that. Now, what this says is not being distressed when it is absent. When it is absent means you try to become mindful, but your anger has come up and you have blasted somebody. You are not able to just observe your anger. Right? So your mindfulness was absent there. And then you become very worried about it after that happened. Naturally. And then Blessed One says, mindfulness was absent in that that situation. If you are worrying, then you are just mindful. It will not become a power. Just accept the fact that you could not control yourself and be more prepared next time. And when you go prepared next time, the same thing will come. Now you are more prepared. You are almost about to blast, right? But you grind your teeth and somehow control it. Right? And negativity is coming. It doesn't stop. But you are more prepared because you have lost the game once. Or it will not happen just with once. It may be more than once. But you know that there are instances where you will lose your mindfulness and the negativity will come up. But when that happens, you become more and more prepared. Because of that, you will be able to be more mindful at a lower level. Right? So within, you see negativities are coming up and you are getting more and more mindful. And instead of becoming distressed about the negativity coming out, you become happy that you are now aware of your own negativity. Right? So you will be distressed, although your negativity is controlled without letting it out, without transcribing it to the external world. still you may worry because you have it within us, right? So when you see it within you, now you have the ability to see your own worry. Now the question is not being mindful of the negativity that is coming out. Now you have an opportunity to see the mental reaction to the negativity that is coming out. The mental reaction to the negativity that is coming out is your worry, your distress. And this is why they said for it to become a power, not being distressed, not worry about the absence or the lacking of the mindfulness, or when your own negativity comes out, right? So then it is not just mindfulness, you become mindful to the result of being mindful as well. That is why it's to the power. I'm just making it up. So in one of the discourses on powers in detail in connected or rather numerical discourses, there's a nice paragraph, and it is saying when you are not distressed, what happens, right? So it says, what is the power of mindfulness and what is the power of mindfulness? Here the noble disciple is mindful, possessing supreme mindfulness and alertness, one who remembers and recollects what was done and what said long ago. This is called power of mindfulness. So here it's defining that as power of mindfulness, right? So what actually happens is when you are not distressed, you just keep observing whatever that is happening. So you will remember the whole process. So if you remember the whole process, then you know what has happened. So this is how your memory increases, memory capacity increases. You don't react to things, right? And this is why we take the reports. We ask when you are practicing, what happened? And you say, I was observing my breath. And initially I was able to observe it, and in-breath was cold and out-breath was very warm. And after some time it becomes subtler, and then it becomes very subtle. And then a lot of thoughts started coming. And then these thoughts were overwhelming. And then you keep on saying a story. Why? Because you remember all that. You're able to recollect, right? So when this is happening, sometimes things that had happened very, very long time ago when you were very small also comes to your mind. And a place that you never thought you will remember suddenly comes to your mind. Someone who has met so many years ago and never met for 30, 40 years, suddenly you remember vivid pictures of being with him. That is because you don't react to things which are hidden, are coming up. Your memory capacity is increasing, and you don't stress your mental process. So when you don't stress your mental process, things that are stored will gradually come out, right? So, and that's for me, it's a result rather than I'm not trying to teach Buddha. Buddha has said it is power of mindfulness. But if you take the definition in Khuddaka Nikaya, which says not being distressed, so this is a result of not being distressed, right? Now the next stage is how these faculties show how mindfulness moves to the top from the third place. I'm not quite sure whether you understood that. When the mindfulness is a faculty, in the spiritual faculties, mindfulness is in the third place. When mindfulness is a strength, mindfulness is in the third place, right? The first one is the faith. The second one is the energy. Third one is the mindfulness, right? But when we talk about enlightenment factors for mindfulness, mindfulness is the first. How is this happening? How is mindfulness coming to the top from the third place? How this is happening is, it's the next evolution process. How it evolves is, there is a fight. There is what do you call conflicting objectives or for the other spiritual faculties. Faith is trying to achieve its objective, and energy is trying to achieve its objective, and concentration is trying to achieve its objective. Insight is trying to achieve its objective. Mindfulness is the only one which is not trying to achieve an objective, but just be aware. Right? It's a very unbiased mentality. But the other mental factors, other spiritual faculties are having some objectives. So therefore, in spiritual faculties, there is a sub-optimization. They fight with each other. Especially if you take the faith. Faith means you just accept what the Buddha says. You just accept what the teacher says. Right? You just accept the instructions and you just carry on. You don't question. And that is directly against the insight faculty. Insight faculty is you are questioning every time. Why this happened? How this happened? Where is it leading to? Right? That is because you have more insightfulness. Right? So these two faculties are fighting. Right? So the one who has faith, just do whatever the teacher is saying. The other person is keeps questioning, keeps questioning, keeps questioning. All these things can happen to the same person when the progress is happening. What mindfulness does is, it balances the two. How does it balances the two? When these are coming up, it will come as your thoughts. Right? If questions are coming up, it will come as a thought, part of your thought process. So if you are mindful enough, you just observe that as well, instead of entertaining them. Instead of identifying yourself with those thoughts, then they balance. And also, you don't just become a blind, faithful person. Right? If there is some question, you become mindful of that. You try to see whether you have an answer to it within yourself, and then try to mature it and then put the question. That also can be done only when you are mindful. Otherwise, you will become a blind, faithful person. No, he said that only, we are doing only that. Yes, it is there, but he said. So you don't allow that to happen also. Some insight, some questioning also should come. That is a recommendation of the Buddha. Don't just accept. Right? So these two can be balanced. Impartiality can be avoided just because the mindfulness is balancing everything from the middle. That is why it is in the third place. Similarly, other two faculties, which is energy and concentration, they are also having sub-optimizations, conflicting objectives. Energy means you somehow or other want to do 1 hour walking, 1 hour sitting in the morning, and then afternoon, and then even in the evening. You want to do it all the time. That's the energy faculty. Concentration faculty means you are just calm, peaceful, sit all the time and relax. You feel so peaceful. You don't have energy. So what happens is, when the concentration develops in that manner, gradually your energy, when you are becoming more and more peaceful, you become more and more lethargic. And when you become more and more energized, you become more agitated And concentration will not be achieved. Right? Someone asked whether I can practice 8 hours sitting. I said, don't do that, because all your energy will be driven towards concentration, and you may achieve concentration, and that concentration will sink you in concentration itself. Right? So these two has to be balanced. Right? So you can do that only when you're mindful. Right? You can see that you are very energized now, and you are going, you are trying to do everything, every other thing in the household in time, and you are trying to get into this. You can see that agitation within you. You can see that only when your mind is with the body, which is called mindfulness. Right? And when you are sitting, if you feel very lethargic and if your body completely falls down, that's a result of concentration, because you have brought your mind to the body and you don't identify yourself with the body, and then body just relaxes on its own. And there is no energy at all. Right? To see that, you have got to be mindful. So these two sub-optimization also will be handled gradually over time by the mindfulness. So when it comes from the faculty level to the power level, strength level, that ability of balancing the two sides is improving, is increasing. So when it is increasing, it's mindfulness being the most powerful energy in the world, or energy in the universe, I should say. Other mentalities, other spiritual faculties naturally appoint the mindfulness as the leader. The other spiritual faculties, faith, understand that the fight that the faith had with the insightfulness was settled by mindfulness. And energy understands that the fight energy had with the concentration was settled by mindfulness. So therefore, naturally leadership comes to the mindfulness. That is why Buddha says at the very outset, keep the mindfulness to the fore. Sating parimukam, which has been misinterpreted by so many books, which says keep the mindfulness in front of the mouth. That's a misinterpretation. Fortunately, Bhante Dhammajiva and monks in Burma, and especially Bhante Katugurunde Jnanananda, he has said, it is not keeping the mindfulness in front of the mouth. Parimukang, uparimukang, yes, it is. That has that meaning. But what it means is keeping it to the fore. Pramukha, we call it. Right? In the first place, give the priority. Right? So when you give the priority to mindfulness, mindfulness is naturally having that impartiality, unbiased nature. Because of that, when you see someone is unbiased, is not robbing public money like happening in Sri Lanka now, or robbing, taking bribes and things like that, everyone will love him. Everyone will select him as the leader. So that is how the mindfulness evolved from the third place to the first place. When it comes to factors for mindfulness. And once that has happened, it aligns the rest of it. Right? So I just showed you the link, how it is coming from a faculty layer, power layer to this new layer. And when you are able to bring the mindfulness in that manner to your life, then only you will be able to see how you are interacting with the world. Then only you can see, okay, now I see my eye is active and I'm seeing something and I'm getting hooked with that, and this is what is happening because within me, because of that, you can see, because the mindfulness is to the fore. And that is why because before factors for enlightenment, we discuss sense basis, right? Okay. Now, when it is on top, when the mindfulness gains this unremitting nature, the Blessed One says, you will have to look after it. You will have to feed it. You will have to water it. You will have to provide fertilizer. Right? There is a discourse that explains how it is done, not only for this factor for enlightenment, but all the 7 factors for enlightenment. And that discourse is called, where is that? Yeah. It's the term given is food discourse, right? And in Pali, it is called Ahara Sutta, or Aharattatika Kaya Sutta is the full title of the discourse. And in that discourse, what the Blessed One says is, for our body, we need food. And for various other mental factors, we need food. It's not solid food and watery food and the food that we usually take cross thing, but there is some sort of food that is necessary for these to grow. So similarly, for the factors for enlightenment also there are food, right? And the food for this particular one, and there is a translation in these books, and the translation is not very good, so I have not taken that. There is a translation in Access to Insight. It says, the mental qualities that act as foothold for mindfulness as a factor for awakening, or factor for, yes, as a factor for awakening or enlightenment. So what here say is the mental qualities that acts as the foothold, right? So it's, that translation is also not very strong enough to explain the Pali term. The Pali term is Aharitika Kaya, and it says Sambojjangattaniya Dhamma. Right? Sati Sambojjangattaniya Dhamma. Sati Sambojjangattaniya Dhamma means the natural factors that that develops the mindfulness, and that is also very strong, and that is the only word that is given in the discourse, nothing after that. So we don't know, we are completely blank what these dhammas, so what these mental qualities, as Access to Insight says, what these mental qualities are, we are completely blank. Fortunately, in the commentaries, they are explaining some mental factors that lead to develop the mindfulness factor for enlightenment. And according to commentaries, they are given 4 main factors, and one is clear comprehension. The second one is removing of confusion about mindfulness. The third one is development of clarity of mindfulness. And the fourth one is happy about the mindfulness, right? So if you take the first one, clear comprehension means continuation of mindfulness. It is not just keeping the mindfulness to the fore. You will have to continue the mindfulness. What do you mean continue the mindfulness? When you walk, you see how the leg is lifted. When the leg is being lifted, you feel the heel is being lifted first, and gradually the rest of the foot. And then you also see not only the shape, not only the manner, you also feel the sensation. What sort of sensation you feel when you lift it? And then once it is completely lifted, And when you move it, how you move it and what sensations you feel when the air is touching when the foot is going through the air. And when it is lowering down, what you feel and how you do it. And when you place the leg, you exactly say, this is how I place my leg. And this is what I actually feel. And these are the areas that I don't feel as well. So your mindfulness is continuing. And after that, you see, suppose you felt the coldness of the floor and on the sole of the feet. And after some time, you say, I feel that coldness, not only on the sole of the feet, but I feel it even up to the ankle sometimes. Gradually, your attention going more and more into the body, and your mindfulness is continuing with the entire process. So therefore, you don't feel that you're walking. Something is happening. Someone is observing. And there is no, because you simply become an observer. And there is no me working. It's a process that is happening. And you say, after sometimes I was just walking and I was lost. Oh, what is happening? That is continuation of mindfulness. Or you might say, okay, I was walking and up to this point, I was able to observe these things. After that, I started thinking, a beautiful song that I heard long time ago came to my mind. And I was singing the song in my head. Continuation of mindfulness, not with the walking. Now you don't fight. No, song, go away. Come back, leg. You don't say that. Okay, song is going and you are just playing the song in your head and you are aware of it and you are very happy about it. You don't fight with yourself, right? So that is why he says, keep the mindfulness to the fore, and it keeps on going. It is not just now one objective, different types of flowers. So the garlands is more beautiful when you have different color, different shapes, different flowers in the garland. One something of the leg, and then something of the sound, something of what you think, and something what you hear. You become mindful for everything. And it comes to a point, you see all these things, you don't select any of those as well. Right? You become mindful and you talk about a particular thing because you are with that. By doing that, what you simply develop is just observing capability. When you develop your observe capability and when it has matured, you don't pick anything, you simply observe all what is happening. Right? So that is clear comprehension in very short explanation. And the other one is removing of mindfulness, removing of confusion about mindfulness. Right? Confusion about mindfulness, if I take the same example, when you get disturbances, you doubt, where is this mindfulness? If I am mindful, shouldn't I be with the leg? If I am mindful, shouldn't I see only the breath? That's a confusion about mindfulness. Just one example. So if I am mindful, shouldn't my anger stop? Shouldn't I reduce my desires? So that is the confusion about mindfulness. Mindfulness means being aware, which our mind never wants to accept. It wants to have some sort of grumbling, crying about something. So we will have to, in order to bring the mindfulness to the top from the third place, one of the food that requires is the clear comprehension, continuation. And then the second one is this, removing confusion about it. Yes, I am mindful. So what? Yes, it's a bad thing. Yes, I'm looking at a girl, but okay, I'm mindfully looking. And when we were discussing while you guys were walking, and yes, we asked some beautiful questions. I said, okay, you do all that, but mindfully. And there were some guys, young boys, who were taking drugs. And I asked them to stop. They did not stop. Then I told them, take it mindfully. After 6 months, they started practicing mindfulness. They stopped taking drugs. right? So what I'm saying is not to experiment those things. Whatever that comes your way, ensure that you are aware. And if you ensure that you are aware, if you are not wavering about your awareness, then you are removing confusion about mindfulness. And not only that, development of clarity of mindfulness. And because our mind will never give up, right? Okay, few instances it will say, okay, mind will accept the fact that you are mindful. Then it will once again bring out some doubt about it, some counter argument about your trying to remove the doubt, right? And then you will have to start improving the clarity. Even that, when that comes out, you'll have to be mindful even about it, right? All these are creations by the mind, and just keep continuing mindfulness. Then it becomes you improve the clarity, and when you have the clarity, just be aware of that as well. Yes, now I am 100% mindful of this is what is happening. Yes, this is happening. It is bad. Yes, I am worried about it. I'm aware. So my awareness is continuing irrespective of it is not in my favor. Then you improve the clarity of mindfulness, not only just remove it, right? And finally, if you can be happy about it, then that is the most important food, right? You become happy about the fact that you are mindful. Even after some time improving the clarity, there will be some cloud hanging over your head. This shouldn't have happened this way. It would have been better if I was not angry. Although I did not say anything, that thought should not have come to me. Your mind is giving all these suggestions, and it will create a huge story about it. And you will have to simply say, shut up, I am happy that I am mindful. So when you have that happiness of being mindful, everything will evaporate. And that is how these foods will be provided, and that is how the unarisen enlightenment factor for mindfulness will come up. And before I conclude, and the commentary is also saying, it further provides that these qualities of mindfulness, when it is developed to the stage of awakening or enlightenment, there are certain characteristics. One characteristic is it is so firm and doesn't bounce back. We call it apilapana, right? Apilapana means it's when you have a rubber ball or a tennis ball, and when you hit it on the ground, it bounces back, right? But here, when you have mindfulness, it doesn't bounce back. Wherever it goes, wherever your attention goes, you continue to keep on having your awareness, right? And that's one characteristic that you will see when it is developed. And the other thing is, you will see any object that comes your way when you are mindful. You take it face to face, right? You don't try to just avoid it, right? Yes, I'm observing the breath, but strong thought, anger thought is coming, or some sense desire is coming. You don't try to avoid it and somehow have your attention to the breath. You become, if it is strong, you just become aware of that thought. If there's a very serious pain in your knee and you can't at all concentrate on your breath, you take your attention gradually to the epicenter of the pain. Right? When your mindfulness is improving, you you meet the objective, or rather meet the object face to face without avoiding it, right? Or you don't ask, how do I get rid of pain? How do I stop thoughts? Don't ask that. That is the object. You just become mindful of that face to face. And when you do that, you feel you are very secured. When your mindfulness is improving this manner, You feel you are very secure because you don't fight with yourself now. Otherwise, always all these things are happening within your mind and you are fighting with yourself. And that fight is taken away. So you feel very relaxed and very secure. You are not disturbing yourself. You don't trouble the troubles anymore. And that improves your ability of not giving up. They call it Tirasanya Padatta, right? In that manner, we provide food necessary to improve and develop the unarisen factor for enlightenment, factor for mindfulness. And this is how the Blessed One is bringing that mindfulness seed that he says at the very beginning, keep the mindfulness to the fore, is evolved in this manner up to the enlightenment factor. And it is only a genius like Buddha can find it when it was not there in the world. Now, he has found it and he has explained it so well, but still we are going around. We are trying to have shortcut. He has given the shortest cut. We have this human body, human mind, different from animal, only because we can develop our mindfulness to this level of being enlightened or to be used to enlighten. Animals can't do that. So if we don't make use of this opportunity, it is lost. We don't know for how many eons. Right? We will go in the cycle of birth and death as we have come in existence so far. It will continue. Right? So therefore, it's a very simple thing, but very difficult. Only thing you will have to do here is learn the art of not doing anything. That is the mindfulness, which is very difficult for any living being. So hope this has given you some insight into the enlightenment factor for mindfulness. With the blessings of Noble Triple Gem to all of you, I will conclude today's talk. And if you have any questions and comments, complaints, we can take them now and discuss. Thank you for listening.
I think, Bhante, if I may, that clarification around the clear comprehension and the factors for taking the foothold for mindfulness is actually quite important because that's something that practically happens as you go through the path, isn't it? So being aware of that itself is very useful, I think. So much merit for that explanation.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. Any questions from here? Yeah, just give me a second.
What is the meaning of sadhu, 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 please?
Meaning of sadhu is well said. Well said. You ask question? Or? Yeah.
Can I also just ask Bhante one thing?
Yes, so there is a question here. Can I take it first?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah. I'll come back to you.
Sure.
Yeah, actually, mom said when she was doing the meditation and she had a very heavy headache, she feel like she should just go out now. So this, like, we have had conversation about it before as well. So what side was it? So around the head, top of the head. So she was very sharp headache, pressure and points and so on. Yeah, yeah. So she said it was same, but like she don't felt it very often, but this was very high pressure on the top of the head and yes, around this area as well. Yeah, from bottom to top.
Yes, that is natural. That is natural because what happens is when we practice, I would say mindfulness rather than meditation. When we practice mindfulness, and from your practice, it appears that is what is happening. You are mindful of what is happening. When you are mindful, what you do is you simply observe, right? When you simply observe, you challenge the habit that has been there in the mind. What is the habit of the mind? Is to react. When something is happening, you just get up and go, or you change it. You don't do anything, right? So when you don't do anything, the energy that was used to do that is no longer required in your system. There has been a biochemical process that prompted those things. There has been some energy within you that prompted those things. Those energies are no longer required, right? So usually you feel them, especially when you observe your sensation. Usually you feel them that they are wasted, right? So they should get flushed out, right? That is why, you know, in any place, when you, especially when you purify water, right, you let those dirty particles settle down into the flow of the tank, and then you open up the tap for those dirty particles to go, mud to go, right? Then the water above will be clear. So similarly here, those negative energies now are about to get flushed out, right? Although it is happening, because of your practice is happening in the right way, our mind is having that ability of clinging. Mind does not accept that because mind is not used to it, right? So therefore, this is something, when you practice, this is something that you will have to continue until you get used to this. Now, since you know that it is happening, is it, you can't label it as a headache, right? It's just a pain that comes when you practice. Or is she having it throughout the day as a headache? Yeah, yeah. So so it is mainly because the practice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It happens. Yes, yes. So anytime when your mind is observing, those negativities are not in action. So then it should get flushed out. So that is exactly what is happening. And that has to happen in that manner. That happens only when the practice is progressing. And since it is happening, she will have to be ready for it. And when it happens, although she says that it is a headache, even without her knowledge, we intentionally don't let it go. Our observation stops and we hold it. That is why what we call clinging. This is how we can see the clinging that we have. So what she will have to do is, if she is able to observe that it is developing, it comes. She said it is coming from bottom. So when it is developing, she will have to just relax as much as possible. And when she can try to see the beginning of the headache, because headache will not just come, it will gradually come. So if she can get to the very, very beginning of the headache, when it is coming from bottom, and then when it comes to the head, the headache will not straight away start. At a certain point, it will start. So at that point, if she can observe one more thought moment without tightly holding, then she will go further. And of course, she is in the path. You can't, when this happens, there are no lot of things that you can do rather than continuing without worrying about it and being as relaxed as possible. Let anything happen, you will just relax and observe, give up everything. And it will come to a point, it may come to a point that your head is going to burst off. Doesn't matter, you just keep observing. You may feel that you are going to die because it's become so grinding and crushing, right? She will have to give up her life and just keep observing, right? So it's a good sign of progress, and don't hate it, don't try to avoid it, don't try to get rid of it. Just be happy of what is happening and let her be mindful at the beginnings of things as much as possible. Yeah, that's the key. All right. You can explain it to her. All right. Teruvan sarne, sukhi hotu, sukhi hotu, sukhi hotu, sukhi hotu. Sorry, Asanga, over to you.
That's okay, Bhante. I just had a question where you mentioned like the mindfulness factor as a factor of enlightenment is the one that really has no objective to achieve, whereas the others like energy, concentration, have their sort of own objective. So in terms of developing those other factors of enlightenment, do you still actively have to develop, for instance, energy and effort at the same time, rather than just being mindful? There's a certain level of development of those other factors that are deliberately needed, isn't it?
No.
Still.
No. If you try to be mindful,
Yeah.
In other words, try to avoid intentional doing as much as possible,
Right.
that is the energy required.
Right.
Here, we always, we have a certain perception about what energy is. And that is what is coming into play when you talk about energy.
Right.
Here, the energy means not that. Here, the energy means your energy not to do something.
Right.
So it's the basically after a certain point, it's the opposite of the energy we know. If it makes sense.
Okay. Yep. That answered the question.
All right. Thank you.
Mainly observation. You said something interesting in the talk, that when and you talked about energy, spiritual faculty, and then the concentration, spiritual faculty, and they're fighting each other. I remember when I first started, I had lots of energy. Like I would get up really, really early, run here, do my hours of meditation, then run back, and then get ready to go to work, and then go to work, and then come home, and then I'd have energy to do that, and blah, 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 all these sort of things. Now I like barely get out of bed and do my hours, and that's at home. And I always thought that it's just because I'm getting older. Like that's how I viewed it. It's like, I can't do this anymore. But I have a feeling it's actually because maybe those two are balancing. Like I had lots of energy and less concentration, and now I have less energy but more concentration. What do you think?
Yeah, it's mainly that, because at the very beginning, we have never been sensitive to ourselves. So when we become mindful, we become very sensitive. So we can see a lot of hype in our system, in everything, right? And also we say we do all these things so perfectly as well. But over time, when you keep on becoming mindful of the same thing, right? There is something called I think those who have done economics may know, there is something called, I have forgotten your name. I've forgotten your name. Nanda, yes. Nanda may know that. Something called diminishing marginal utility. Diminishing marginal utility means when you take same amount of something within a defined intervals, your need for it reduces. Right? Suppose you are very thirsty and I give you a glass of water, and it is the best glass of water that you have ever taken. And within 5 minutes, I give one more. You are a little bit thirsty, you take that as well. And then in another 5 minutes, I give one. Then you say, Bante, enough. But still you take it and have a sip and then throw it out. And then after another 5 minutes, I'll give one more. Then you say, Bante, I told you once. And it gets more and more because your need for that is reducing. So the same thing is happening when you become mindful. You observe, keep on observing the same thing. You are so energized and you have been observing it for such a long time. So what? It becomes. Right? So its interest, its vividity reduces gradually. And that is what is expected as well. Initially, when your sensitivity is high, you see a lot of shades, colors, manners of that. You can see the discrimination. But when you keep on observing, you come out of the discrimination, you see the commonality of those things. The common factors, the common features, common characteristics. When you see the common characteristics, there is nothing to be hyped about. So that happens when it progresses. All right. Any other comments, questions? Right. So if we don't have anything, we can transfer merits and then conclude the session by practicing mindfulness for about 1.5 hours, then listening to talk about it and answering or clarifying doubts about it. We have generated tremendous amount of positive energies which can be shared with other living beings in the universe. So to do that, we will chant the traditional stanzas and share the merits.